Hello, hello, and welcome everyone. I'm so excited to get an opportunity to go live and talk with people like our guest today. I love the idea of branding. I love the idea of taking a lot of the amazing brands and businesses that we have out here in the vegan space and helping them transform, helping them reach new audiences, and often helping them really see themselves in the future. I think one of the hardest things about building a business, building a brand, is you have to get done the right here and now. You have to make all these decisions, but sometimes it can be hard to see what your future is going to be like. It can be hard to see the impact that you might be able to make in the long run. And I believe by working with individuals like our guest today, you're really going to be able to see the future. So if any of you are thinking about rebranding their business, if you're thinking about changing your business, shifting, expanding your target market, please, please, please make sure you bookmark, make sure you listen to this interview today, because I really think it's going to be not only enlightening and inspirational, but I also think we're going to get into some good little nuggets on
Mhm.
things that you might be able to implement as well. So let me introduce our guest, Aimee. Aimee, it's so great to have you here today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's give people a little bit of background. Let's talk about Good Stuff Partners. I love the name, by the way. I think when our editor was creating the title, she came up with the idea of saying, like, how do you create the good stuff from the vegan stuff?
Yep.
And I love that idea of creating good stuff. So before we talk about what you're doing today, before we talk about the amazing impact in the brands that you work with, let's rewind the clock. Let's
Mhm.
give people a sense of your background. And then let's talk about a little bit how you decided to start Good Stuff Partners. And then we'll take it from there. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right.
Yeah, so I became a vegetarian when I was a teenager in high school, and then I became a vegan when I was 29, and I'm now 53. And so I've been an animal advocate most of my life now, and I wanted to find a way to merge that with my sort of creative abilities. I was always drawing and painting as a kid, but I really loved animals, and they were a source of unconditional love in my childhood when I really needed it. And so when I had the opportunity to become a creative and actually get paid and make a paycheck. Then I got into graphic design, and through that process, was able to work with some early startups in the vegan world over 20 years ago. So it felt like the Wild West, quite a frontier back then compared to how it is now. So I've seen a lot
Absolutely.
of change. And when I had the opportunity to start Good Stuff 11 years ago, my partner and I decided to really double down and only work with purpose-driven companies. And our mantra is that anyone that we work with needs to be doing making life better for people, the planet, or animals. And it's usually animals before people because I usually like animals more than people. And that's how we started. And I just love having the opportunity to really use everything I've learned in my career to really propel vegan brands that really need some help in their communications.
I love that. I agree with you. I think often we forget about how important animals are and how important it is, especially in our messaging, our products, and our brands, that we not only, don't pull in some of the either old stereotypes or sometimes sayings that we've even grown up with that are
Hmm.
really not proper and really shouldn't be used anymore.
Yep.
Those things can creep into marketing. They can creep
Yep.
into the way we position our businesses and brands. And I think it's really important to have someone kind of looking at that and making sure that we're not kind of carrying forward language
Yep.
that really is detrimental to animals. So I really love the fact that you're putting them like really in that priority spot.
Mhm.
One question I have for you is, how did you make that transition to, building an agency, like building and getting paid for it? And the reason I bring that up is for a lot of our audience, that's what they really struggle with. Like they're
Mhm.
great at something, but that transition to, I got to do all the business stuff and the marketing stuff and the
Mhm.
paying and all that stuff can really weigh down on them. So
Yep.
how did you either find your vision, or were you a
Mhm.
person that stumbled your way through to success,
Yes.
through that process?
Yes. When I first moved to San Francisco from the Central Coast of California, I worked at a very small agency. I never went to college. There wasn't really a degree you could get in branding. You could get degrees in marketing or business, but I didn't really want to go down that route. So I did really fumble my way to where I am now. And I'm actually glad that I did, because I learned how things really work rather than how you're sort of taught in school. You're kind of shielded from having to deal with difficult situations or all the bureaucracy that comes with working with organizations. And I think all of my skills in hospitality and working in delis and making coffee, and all the odd jobs that I had, in my teens and 20s really prepared me to deal with people. And I think that is honestly probably more than half of the job is communication. So if you can really communicate with people, you'll go a long way. Um, but when I moved to San Francisco, I didn't really know what I was going to be doing. I knew it was going to be something creative. And I just happened to land at a place that I had a fantastic mentor, someone named Jim Prop. And he took me under his wing and taught me everything he knew. So that was, better than going to school. I learned the ropes through that business because I was only the fourth employee. So I got to see everything that happened in an organization. So I recommend anyone to go and work for a small agency so they can see the ins and outs of everything that happens rather than being in a cubicle and being kind of a monotasker. So that was really instrumental for me to kind of have that jumping off point to start my own business. And so from there, I just worked on a lot of different, a variety of businesses. And I then just had the opportunity to work with, I think VDog was the first plant-based brand that came to me at my previous agency. And it was an eye-opener because I realized that all the skills that I'd built and everything that I'd learned through communications and branding and design, I could now use to help promote a business that I actually really believed in, being a vegan myself, loving animals, working with a family-run business. And I saw the opportunity for them to really be able to scale if they had great communications. And so really that was the beginning of me realizing that that's all I want to work on. I don't want to work on anything that is even just neutral.
Yeah.
Certainly nothing that's bad for the planet or animals or people, but even neutral businesses. I just wasn't really excited to get out of bed every day. And so when I had the opportunity to start Good Stuff, we really just said, that's all we're going to do. We're going to white knuckle it, and hopefully people will come along with us and understand what purpose driven means over time. But 11 years ago, that was not quite a thing as it is now. So I think my advice to anyone who is looking to start a business is find a great mentor and then really decide what you want to stand for. I think that is the biggest opportunity, and I think it's missed by a lot of agencies because there is so much competition now compared to when I started over 26 years ago. There's a flood of agencies that do everything, but they don't necessarily stand for anything. So when you really put your stake in the ground, it's a lot easier to attract like-minded people. The trust is already 50% there from the get-go because you're just connecting on your values. And that to me is where you really build the right people and you enjoy the work so much more.
I love that answer because it really helps people realize how important it is to focus and to really understand who your customer is. I think for a
Mhm.
lot of people, it's hard to turn away customers. I talk to a lot of people, and I don't know if you get this
Oh,
experience
yeah.
as well, where people are like, I want everyone. I don't want to turn off anybody. I want everyone to use my product or my service.
Yeah.
And, I think people really miss the fact that there's such a bond that can be built when you really have a good idea of who is your audience and who is not your audience. And also, I feel like you can better serve your audience when you have very good clarity
Yes,
on what they need and how what you do aligns with them.
absolutely. Yes.
So let me just dive a little bit into good stuff. Now, what size organizations do you work with? Large organizations, small organizations, people who are more transitioning? Give me a sense, especially if anybody who's listening and they're thinking, I need some help, maybe I should reach out. Let's give them a sense of, where and when they should be giving you a call.
Yeah, so right now, our business is half nonprofits and half for profits, but they all have the common thread of being purpose driven. And so our nonprofit sizes can run anywhere from, maybe 80 to 100 people, and maybe they've got operating budgets of a million or more. And then on the commercial side, we have some companies that are 3 billion, 10 billion, but we're working on a smaller project within those companies, all being purpose driven. So it runs the gamut. Sometimes we'll work on smaller projects because it's something that we really believe in. Like we were in the process of our fentanyl campaign that we did pro bono through a local organization here through our county. So it was something that we wanted to do to give back. So that was an opportunity. We're not making any money at all, but it's something that we really believe in and helping. And then other companies, maybe they're vegan or plant based, or they're helping people. So it's always through that filter that we have of helping people, planet, and the animals. But honestly, the size kind of runs the gamut based on whether it's a passion project of ours and we just personally want to work on it, or we need to pay the bills and maybe we're not as excited about it, but we know over time it will have a great impact on the community. So it really does. I think having the filter is the most important part of it, not necessarily the size that you're going after. Of course, as companies get bigger, you're bumping up against bigger agencies who maybe have more experience and more resources. So it's kind of trying to keep that in mind as you're going after a business and not overshooting. But you always have to grow and kind of reach further up.
Yeah. And I think that's always a challenge. Like as you run a business, you're trying to find not only your sweet spot,
Mm-hmm.
but where do you, even as a business, expand as your clients expand and grow?
Yeah.
Because I think that's also a interesting dance as a business owner because you want your businesses to grow, but it can
Mm-hmm.
be very interesting when you have a client that really grows beyond, what was initially your sweet spot, and you're like, all right, I guess we're growing together here.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love that. One thing I wanted to do is maybe let's break down branding. Let's break down the creative side of things because I feel for a lot of entrepreneurs and for a lot of people who are running businesses, planning to run businesses, it really feels a little bit confusing. It's almost like what's the branding side? What is, where does branding start and stop?
Mm-hmm.
And I always find that for many of us kind of in this space, we define it a little bit differently. So I'd love to hear your perspective on where you think that space is, and obviously where that space is that you operate.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I look around at a lot of agencies and I see that they offer branding, but really I'm just seeing graphic design, which is great. I mean, I love graphic design. I still push the pixels around myself. I always want to get my hands dirty in that. And that's where I started really. But until I really understood what creating a brand position was all about. That's where you kind of are adding fuel to the fire. So when you can really merge the kind of the verbal positioning of a company with powerful visuals, that's where the brand becomes more than the sum of its parts. So for us, I think what we're really good at is getting to the core essence of a business. And I kind of describe it like getting to know a person. At your core, in your DNA, you are always the same person, but you might speak to your grandmother or your best friend or a colleague slightly differently. So there is a little bit of maneuverability around the way that you present yourself, and brands are very similar. So once we get to the core essence of a brand, they can continue to ebb and flow within the business, within their audiences. When you get that anchor in the ground really solid, that's the most important thing about branding. So, as an example, we're about to celebrate Ritual Coffee's 20th anniversary next year. And I first started working with them in 2005 when they were a tiny little coffee shop. Now they're one of the most respected coffee companies in the world. But when they started, they were all about crappy corporate coffee. So they were sick of the Starbucks in the world, and they really wanted to offer something better, work with directly with farmers, pay them fair money. And so we created the positioning of revolutionizing coffee, which is why that symbol there there
Yeah.
is still true to this day, because now they're all about demystifying coffee. So they're always going against the mainstream, and that's why this revolutionary icon has stayed true for the last 20 years of their brand. And we are now in the third phase of their rebrand, but we don't need to change their logo because it still represents at their core who they are. And that is really what branding is all about, is getting to that core. It's not the nice veneer, although that's really fun to design, but you really need to be able to communicate what a brand stands for, first and foremost.
And do you guys also work with strategy? Do you also work with, product development and so forth? Or do you kind of have a line that you draw in the sand on where you kind of start and stop? I'm just curious because, you
Yeah.
know, like I said, we all kind of see it differently. And I think it'd be
Mhm.
great for our audience to understand your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people tend to throw you into the marketing umbrella, which is, of course, like giant, and that
Yeah.
is very confusing for people. What we do at the core is really brand positioning, brand voice, naming, taglines, all of that, brand identity, and then we push that out across all print and digital applications, including video, packaging design, any environmental graphics, anywhere a brand can show up. We've wrapped vehicles. So we take it pretty much anywhere. And then we bring in partners for things like for PR and research, because that's not really our core. It's very related, and it helps accentuate the work that we're doing and informs us. But we bring in partners for that type of work. So we really do focus on the core brand, and then bring in people as we need, kind of outside in the kind of wider marketing circles.
Perfect, perfect. So as we talk about that, as we talk about, how you help other businesses transform, I think one question that I always love to ask people in our kind of sessions here is about pivoting. Something because it's the name of the podcast, but also I just think it's an interesting aspect of running a business, how through the years, many of us have to pivot, change for all different types of circumstances. And I'm curious if you've had any of those specific experiences that have reshaped either the way you've run your company, the way you've positioned your company, or even the way that you see your company kind of today versus the way it was when you first started.
Yeah, I mean, we just went through a transition in January, the beginning of this year, because COVID taught us a lot about how people work, how they do their best work, burnout in particular, which, of course, people who are burnout aren't going to be doing their best creative work. Me personally, and my partner, who's also my husband, we've been at this a long time. And I think we're at that age where we only want to work on things we believe in, but we also want a good work-life balance. And that is only going to make our work better. So we transitioned to a 4-day work week in January. We did a 6-month pilot on the last 6 months. And I would say that's been just transformative for us as a business. It's great to be able to offer that to our employees. We're a small company of about 9 people. But we're in the Bay Area, which is, tech salaries are astronomical, and it's really hard for us to compete with those salaries when half of our clients are nonprofits. So we really look to offer our employees other benefits, and that was one that we were really excited about. So we work Monday through Thursday in the office, and then we all have Fridays off. And that's really allowed us to kind of recharge our batteries and bring more back to work when we're showing up on Monday and not dragging because we didn't have enough time to do everything we needed to do. And our clients have been really supportive of that, which is fantastic because they're all purpose driven. They kind of have that sort of mindset already.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been a great change for us. We still we offer our employees 100% of their salary for 80% of their time to do 100% of the productivity. And so we really restructured the days that we work and really have really good focus time where we're not being interrupted. We were talking earlier about multitasking, and that's really a time suck, and it really drains people. So we've been really disciplined about creating policies and internally to help us really get through 5 days of work in 4. But actually, our productivity has gone up, and that's been in the studies all across Europe and the United States. It's actually increases your productivity, but also increases just life satisfaction. So it's really been a win-win, and we're really excited about it and hope that other people might be inspired by that and try it out themselves. Because I think it's just the way that businesses
Yeah.
are going to go in the future anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think it's the way that a lot of businesses are going to go in the future because it not only does it make sense,
Mhm.
like you said, the research is there to support it. I think just like any major change, a lot of us just struggle with the change. I am curious when you went through it, there's always that practical side of us that
Mhm.
says, okay, this is the right thing to do. And then there's the emotional side of us that's like, will it
Uh-huh.
work? you know, and balancing those two, I think, is always challenging. But that's also part of being an entrepreneur, is part of running a business that you always have to kind of balance some of those emotions as you go through things.
Yeah.
But it definitely sounds like that transition has worked out really well for you.
Yeah, it's been great, and we really were all motivated to make it work because you really can't put the genie back in the bottle. Once people have experienced 3-day weekends every week, it's really hard to go back. So I think our team is really committed to making it work, and we check each other, from time to time just to make sure we're not slipping. But it's just it has been just a change, fundamental change of our business and everyone's livelihoods. It's just been fantastic. I wish we'd done it sooner, but I'm glad that we're doing it now, and I just couldn't recommend it enough. And if anyone's interested, they can look at our website. There's a 4-day work week organization that can take you through that process. And they were really invaluable in helping us, figure out funky policies, what happens on holiday weeks, and
Yeah.
all of that. Who's talking to the clients on Friday if there's an emergency? All of that. There are practical things that you need to tackle, but it's all doable, and it's working out really great. And I would encourage anyone to reach out if they have any questions about our own experience with it.
Yeah, I was taking a look at that link when I was on your website. I was like, "Ooh, this is really
Uh-huh.
interesting." So I'm glad you mentioned it because I'm
Mhm.
sure plenty of our listeners will take a look at it. Well, one thing I'm thinking about, and this might be a good transition, is if people want to reach out to you, whether they're just want to support the work you're doing,
Mhm.
whether they're looking for some help with branding and they're, serious about maybe making some of those next steps, or if they just want to be fans of yours and all the great work you do,
Yep.
what's the best way for them to connect? What's the best way to learn more about the work that you do?
Mhm.
Whether for your website, social media, what would you recommend?
Yeah, I would recommend them to reach out to us at the studio. They can email us at hello@goodstuffpartners.com. I often talk to, young designers who may be like a cousin of someone or a niece who's looking to get into the business, or even fellow entrepreneurs that may need some advice, or even businesses. Oftentimes we'll talk to businesses kind of early on where they may not be ready to invest, but it's good to give them some advice and things to maybe expect or work towards when they get ready for branding. So we do a lot of free conversations. We always want to help people who are doing things that we believe in. So for us, that's just part of our nature that we want to help people. So I would encourage anyone to reach out to us with any questions. More than happy to chat or shoot them an email if it helps them in their sort of journey for doing better.
Perfect. Perfect. And I guess as we wrap up today's interview, it just feels like the time flew. I had looked down at the clock and I was like, oh my goodness.
Right.
Um, but it was so good to, get the background, get the information. And also, I just love the work that you're doing. And one thing I'm thinking is I always love to hear people's perspective. And one final question I have, I guess, is about maybe advice that you might have for our audience. Advice that, whether it's advice because of lessons learned, meaning something you wish you could have told your younger self that you know now,
Uh-huh.
or if it's advice for anyone who's starting out and trying to tiptoe into branding and understanding how to, like you said, at the core, really understand what their brand is and what they stand for. I'd love to maybe leave our audience with just a little bit of advice from you or recommendation from you that they could chew on and potentially apply to their business.
Yeah, I think finding other creatives is always good to surround yourself with people who are kind of on a similar journey. We work with a digital strategist who's done a great job of kind of creating her own network of other women that she loves to work with, and they get together on a regular basis and they trade war stories and advice. So they're there to support each other. I think that's a great way to just, if you can network, it's really difficult in the beginning, but attending design conferences, any kind of groups that you can go to just to get out there and meet people. But I would say that my second piece of advice, and this is probably true of anything in life really, is what I've really learned is to trust my gut. When it comes to working with people, sometimes you just don't have a good feeling about someone. And typically that doesn't change throughout the relationship. And you often regret investing the time in the wrong people. And I have burned through many hours and days and weeks and months working with people who kind of tend to suck all the oxygen out of the room, and it doesn't give you the energy to put towards the people who really do value what you provide and are willing to invest in it and listen to your advice and be led. So I'd say that that's something I wish I had done early on, but it takes time to kind of learn those things. So just listen to your gut. If you have a bad feeling about something, run for the hills, find a different client because it never really works out. And I think that's just something as women also, we need to trust our gut more. And it's just something I wish I'd done kind of early on. So, and it goes the other way. When you have a great feeling about someone, you can really start to build great relationships. And the benefit of that is that you then start to build your network through their network, because then they recommend you to someone else. So it kind of creates this trajectory. So when you really work with people that you connect with and you believe in, then you're in their circle. And that's really how we've built our business, is working with the people that we really love and admire and respect, because then your network grows within those bubbles. If you go down the wrong path, then it's really hard to come back to the center again.
That's really great advice. I didn't even expect you to go that direction. I
Oh,
love, love, love
I didn't
it. But
either.
that's a really good point and a good reminder, Because I think sometimes when running our businesses, we're thinking about, okay, we got to help as many people, we have to get in front of as many clients, we have to grow. You know what I mean? We have all these things that are just pushing us. And sometimes, like you said, pushing us on the wrong path. And
Yes,
therefore, it's hard because now you have clients that are not clients that want to move forward, or you have clients that are not willing to take the advice and apply it, or whatever reason. There's, you and I could probably spend hours talking about all the different things that
sure.
happen working with
Yeah,
clients and the
it's hard when you have
challenges.
to pay the bills, right? It's like
Yeah,
you feel that pressure, and that's understandable, but, it never pays off.
yeah,
So, yeah, trusting your
yeah.
gut is number 1.
It is. And it's a good practice to learn to trust yourself,
Mhm.
because it can be very easy to lose that as you run a business, as you kind of play in certain playgrounds, and also as you get a little burned over the years. you know, Things get a little dicey when you've been in business for a while and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
remember that bad experience. And you can
And
toughen
hopefully
up
you
or
can laugh
harden up.
about it at some point, tell the stories later on once you get some distance from it. It's all helpful. And I think, if I can learn from those experiences and pass that on to other people, then I feel like, okay, there's something valuable that came from it. It was painful at the time, but it definitely helps you double down on what you really stand for.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Aimee, thank you so much for your time today. It has been great not only chatting with you, just learning about your journey, and then also just hearing some of that advice and those nuggets that you just sprinkled in along the way. We can't wait to get this not only out to our podcast audience, but get this out on social media and share it. I think it's just a great, story of what you do and also the people you help. I think it just makes all of us feel a little bit warmer inside, a little bit better about everything that's going on in the world. To know that there's people like you just helping drive that goodness forward, or like you said, the good stuff. But it's wonderful, wonderful to
Well,
talk to you. And once again, this is Aimee from Good Stuff Partners. If anyone wants to follow up with Aimee, please, please, please use the description with this video or any of the content that you're consuming, whether you're on our podcast or watching this live or listening to this at a later date. We really highly recommend that you reach out to our guests and specifically reach out to Aimee. So once again, Aimee, thank you so much for being here today.
thank you, Stephanie, for having me. It was a pleasure and really lovely to get to talk to you. So, yeah, and I look forward to hearing from your fellow listeners at some point.
Absolutely. I really can't wait for them to jump on this one. And it's been great just chit chatting with you as well. And thank you, everyone. Whether you joined us live or you watch this as a recording, it's so wonderful to have you here, wonderful to have you support us, and wonderful for you to show up and learn and grow and hear these stories. Because I really think having an opportunity to hear how other entrepreneurs have built their businesses, also learning about other businesses that might be able to help you, and also, I think getting advice from people who have paved the way for many of us who are entrepreneurs out there can really be valuable. So, thank you so much, everyone, for your time. And we'll see you in our next interview. Bye.
Thank you.